This video is going to be so exciting. I cannot wait to share this with you. We are talking all about the 12th house. So if you have any planets in the 12th house, this video is for you. And also we're going to talk about the transiting planets to the 12th house. But you all have a 12th house, and it is doing something in your life for all of you. So even if you don't have your sun sign or your moon sign in the 12th house, this video is relevant to you. You know, I searched high and low for a good 12th house video, and there is quite a lot of information out there. But one of the things that I found out is that astrologers talk about the 12th house in such highfalutin, fancy, esoteric terms that it never is distilled down to the pragmatics. So today, Connie Joe, our reader here at Team Soul Navigation, yay, and I are in the house to talk all about the 12th house, and we're going to make it real for you. We are going to distill it down to its bare bones. We're not going to miss out on the juicy fruit, and we're going to give it all to you. But what we're going to do after that is we're going to talk about the planets moving through the 12th house, and it's going to be so exciting. And Connie Joe, I am so happy you are here with me today, all the way from Florida to Seattle. Close.
Yes.
We're like as far away as we can be on the continent, but close.
Exactly. We are.
So let's dive into the 12th house. And I just want to first ask you, how do you distill the 12th house down into sort of a high level headline at first, and then we can go a little bit deeper?
Well, I think the 12th house holds our spiritual mission in this lifetime.
Yeah.
And that's how we can find our spiritual mission.
I would agree with you. And I think that there's also our karma is found in this house too, from past lives. And
Yes.
I like how you say it's our spiritual mission, because I do see it as sort of a portal to the divine.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that connection to the divine.
Now, I do think that it's still true that it does stand for hospitals, institutions, large animals, all of the things as it opposes our 6th house, but it doesn't have to be just the doom gloom stuff. It can be so much more.
I agree with that, and that's the difference between, I believe, modern evolutionary astrology and traditional astrology. And in traditional astrology, it is really a dark house. It is a house of doom and gloom, losses and suffering and victimization. And I mean, you were taught, and I think they still teach this in traditional Hellenistic and even Vedic astrology, that it's really bad luck if you have a lot of planets in the 12th house. And
Yes.
I think we've just grown way beyond that archaic interpretation of the 12th.
Oh, absolutely. Because it was portrayed as the house of our own self-undoing,
Yeah.
things that are hidden from us. And in a way, I do think it's true that things in the 12th house are hidden as they're behind the ascendant. They may be harder for us to access, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be an evil thing or even a sad or doom and gloom thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I agree with you. I do find that in this house, well, like all houses, it's on a continuum. The healthiness of the house, or of the native, as we call it, the person whose chart we're looking at,
Yeah.
it's on a continuum. So, if you're a really unhealthy person, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, you can, and you have a lot of planets in this house, you can experience deep self-undoing, victimization, and woe is me. You can feel so alienated from the world and life that you are your own worst enemy.
Agreed. And I also think that it can be, if the rest of the chart is not healthy, a place of escapism. That might be where you would find addiction in that 12th house. But as addictions exist in this world, they must exist somewhere in the chart, right?
Exactly. This is on the service axis. And with the 6th house and the 12th house, the Virgo Pisces axis. And one of the things that I find is really interesting is when I have been in my own state of melancholy, I think of this house as very melancholy. The poet's soul lives
Yeah.
here. The poetry in your chart can be found in the 12th house. But what I was going to say is, while it's on the service axis, even when I have been in the saddest times of my life, sometimes the quickest way to get out of my own pain is to get into the life of another person or get into the suffering of another person. And so I do see that service is a way to work with this house.
Agreed. And what's funny is that you said that, as I believe it's also the house where fame and fortune can dwell. And if you'll find that a lot of famous people have 12th house placements. So after a little bit of research, I always thought that it was because it's the house of the collective. They're sharing that planet with everyone. But I also think, Meredith, that it's because it's the house of isolation. And sometimes when you have that much fame, you feel a sense of isolation from the everyday world.
Totally. I love that. So let's look at well, I don't even know who has 12th house. Madonna.
Madonna, for one. Kanye West is one. There are so many.
Okay. And Kanye admits that he has a personality or a mental condition, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we see that a lot with the 12th house too. But I love that you said that, because there is glamour with the 12th house. And I think it's because it's attached to Neptune.
Agreed.
But it is kind of funny because the 6th house, the daily mundane world, it just to expand upon your thought, which I love, is in opposition to the 12th house, which you say is the collective. And to put that in another term, think of the 12th house for our listeners as the infinite, the infinite cosmic world and how big that is. So when you're Madonna standing on the stage, you are in that infinite cosmic world, if you will, right? Larger than life, larger than she probably ever imagined, not sort of the ordinary world of the 6th house that's in opposition to. And speaking to the collective, I love that. But also, I think it is extraordinarily painful, like you said, to be that famous, because you feel so infinitely large and simultaneously infinitely small, and your daily life has been stolen opposition from you. You can't just go to Starbucks anymore.
Exactly. It would be really hard to feel, just enjoy the mundane things of life. Like you just said, like just going to get dinner or the grocery store or something, it's out of the question.
I loved when I saw the video of Michelle Obama shopping at Target, and she bumps into Oprah or something like that. Like, what are you doing here? It was so funny. And it was so funny because they're 12th house people, larger than life, right? Doing a 6th house thing, shopping at Target. It was so funny. I think that this is a house also where it's kind of funny. So the famous people that make a lot of money, this isn't the house of money. This is the house of spiritual reward, of really stepping into, I think, your cosmic calling and your divine relationship with God or spirit or the universe. And a lot of those people that have those 12th house placements, their artwork or they sort of feel like they were called from God to do it. It's like your destiny was placed upon you. You didn't necessarily ask for it.
I agree 100%. And as far as everyone goes, I feel like, Meredith, that the houses, they fall on top of each other, each having, it's like the first house has its meaning, then it's followed by, you learn something else in the second house, and you go all the way around. But by the time you get to the 11th house, which is our ambitions, hopes, wishes, dreams. It's social networks that we have, and it's also our friendships. But if we think of it as, our ambitions, our hopes are finally fulfilled, what did you learn in that house? Well, a lot of times people confuse Aquarius as a water sign, but it's not. She has the jug of water and she's pouring out her knowledge onto the 12th house, which is the collective where all of the fish come to swim. So
I
it's really
love,
cool.
yeah, I love how you show the interconnections of the houses, and there could be no 12th house without the whole rest of the zodiac. It is the house of endings, and that's where it got in traditional astrology, sort of its sadness, and it represents the endings and the losses. But I think it is the ending of the ego-based world that we live in, sort of moving from the third dimensional world to the fifth dimension.
Oh, you gave me chills. That I agree. That is so true.
Right. And that's that 11th house water bear pouring that wisdom, because the 11th house I see is the highest, the higher octave of the mind, because it's Uranus's house.
Yes.
Because it's the 11th house, because it's Aquarius's house, and Uranus, I think, is the higher octave of Mercury. This is Neptune's house, which is the higher octave of Venus.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I agree.
So it's interesting. I was saying that it's the house of losses. But I think another really neat thing to talk about would be occupations, associated with the 12th house. Do you want to start?
I do, because I think the most fun occupation I can think of is a zookeeper. I mean, who would have thought? Or someone that works with other large animals. And I think that's probably the most cool, physical job that you could do, but also healthcare workers, people that work in institutions.
Yeah.
But also psychics and
totally.
Mystics, and people that write those kind of books or that kind of material. And here's a good one, Meredith, about a spy or a detective.
Oh, a spy or detective?
Yes.
Yeah, uncovering like the mysteries.
Yes.
I find that there's people that are very, very, they're the researchers here. Like they go within, and it's kind of like the 8th house and the 4th house, right? Those water houses creates deep reflection. Also a lot of yoga teachers, meditation facilitators. And you even see acupuncturist or massage therapies on this axis, the 6th and the 12th. And sometimes just there's a healer with this aspect, where they want to take on nonprofit organizations to help the underdog in the world.
That's what I was going to say. Charity workers, yeah.
And I'm looking over here because I'm looking at you, but I should be looking up there. But so one of the things that you mentioned is like the zookeeper. I think this is the house of animal communication.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Like the animal whisperer. This is the person that can actually maybe not tame the lion, but at least become friends with it,
Yeah, it would be interesting to see Siegfried and Roy. What was their chart, right? And
I actually meant to look that up. But
me too. And then that ultimately was also their demise, right? The tigers, was it the demise of both of them? I can't recall.
One of them. Just one of them.
And the self-undoing in this house, like a message, and maybe you could give one too, but a message that I would have for anybody who's got planets in the 12th house or a lot of Pisces, or a giant Neptune, like Neptune rising, Neptune on the midheaven, Neptune on the IC, would be sort of like, if you can somehow remedy through service to yourself, service through to others. If you can remedy your own feelings of alienation and sadness. Now, the sadness is usually legitimate. In your life, you probably felt like things didn't come as easily for you, or life is just not dishing it out for you as well as others, or you've been left out or diminished, or you feel very small in a big world. And it's very hard to close that gap. But you have to remember that you're here kind of on a non-earthbound plane to understand the other world as well. And you're sort of a bridge between spirituality and reality. And it is a painful place to try to do ordinary life and find fulfillment in, the ordinary. But there's not, right? But there's nothing wrong with you. I promise you. And if you can close that gap and just know that you're the bridge between these two worlds, the divine and reality, and know that you're kind of on an advanced track. I think you're in the AP course of life, the advanced placement.
And Mary, with the 12th house as well, I think boundaries are very hard to set, because when you think of Neptune or you think of Pisces, there's no boundaries. Neptune is the planet of no boundaries. And we talk about the fish, they can go anywhere. So being able to set up boundaries in this house is very important. Not only boundaries with other people, but boundaries within yourself. Being able to have that beautiful access to the spiritual realm, the psychic realm, but also be able to come back to the everyday reality, which is the 6th house.
Right. And incorporate, right? It's the opposition. So they have to incorporate that.
Yeah, exactly.
The mundane utilization of becoming useful in the world, instead of just also escaping into the other world. And I find a lot of art in this house too. Do you? A lot of artists.
Absolutely. I think they are so inspired because they can actually go to places that we can't go. This house is full of imagination, Meredith, which may be why so many actors, actresses, people that are famous, they're able to access that imagination that comes with Neptune, that comes with this psychic, spiritual connection that they have. And I love it. So yes, artistry, everything most beautiful things.
I agree with you. It's like people with really large 12th houses, or even if you're experiencing a big transit to the 12th house, like Uranus in the 12th house, there's sort of an innovative, imaginary, creative, mind expanding, mind blowing piece of work that can come from you, that you can birth, that can literally change the world. It's very powerful if you can lean into it. And, I can't think of the quote, but it's like, art isn't, as somebody said, I forget who said this famous quote, but it was something like, art is not for me to tell you what to feel. It's something like, it is made for you to see my art, and you tell me what it makes you feel.
Oh, I don't know who said it, but I love it.
Yeah, it was something like that. That was really cool. Well, do you want to talk about the planets for, transiting the 12th house, or if a person has, like, you could start with the sun. If the person has their sun in the 12th house, a lot of traditional astrologers would say that's a hard placement. Planets in the 12th.
I think that they would. And okay, so I get it in a way, because the 12th house is behind the ascendant and it's harder to access, especially when you're younger. You may have a hard time with the sun there finding your purpose in life. What are you here to do? But at the same time, people with the 12th house suns are very intuitive. And when they are able to capture the sunlight on that side, on that 12th house side, I think that they're very psychic, and that they're very good at discerning what's going on in the world. See, Meredith, I think they pick up on the collective feel. That's a talent. It may also not feel very good at times. If you were able to walk into a room or walk into a circumstance and pick up on the feelings of everyone in that room, that's a it's a hard thing, but it's also a blessing. You can see it as both ways like that. And then in synastry, if someone's sun falls into your 12th house, or you have a 12th house composite sun, it may feel very karmic, like we've been together before, we've done this before. It could also it could open up your subconscious a bit, where you're more receptive and perceptive about 12th house things. But also, I think it could make you feel, depending on the person, a bit uncomfortable to have their big sun shining on your private 12th house. And all of a sudden you may feel just a little bit exposed.
Right. And also, I want to add one thing to this that a lot of astrologers don't talk about. If you have Leo on the cusp of your 12th house, you may feel this way too, because the ruler of Leo is the sun. And so if you have just Leo and absolutely nothing in the 12th house, well, the sun in your chart rules that 12th house.
You're right.
So think about, I want you guys all to stay with us through this whole video, because we're going to show you how the 12th house is affected in your life based on the planet that you have there. As Connie said, if somebody else puts their sun in your 12th house. So for example, let's say you have Leo on the cusp of your 12th house, and then you meet a person who is a Leo. Well, they're putting their Leo sun in your 12th house. And then that's to what Connie was saying, just to explain it a little bit more. And then if you don't know what a composite sun is, that's okay. You can learn that later. That's a little advanced.
Exactly.
And then also if you have your own sun there, right? So you can look at this 4 or 5 different ways. And I love that. I love that, Connie. I find that a lot of people who have sun in the 12th house for much of their childhood, maybe even much of their life, I see 2 things that happen. One, they feel quite invisible. I call this Harry Potter's invisible cloak.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Aspect, where they just feel not seen a lot of times until they are, or they've been told or taught to diminish themselves, diminish their light by their parents. Like children are to be, seen, not heard,
and not heard, or
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or go play outside, or, and so they alienate. And then what happens is because they alienate, they're reclusive. And then it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But don't you also find that sun in the 12th house, people really need to take naps?
Yes. And I think this is true of all the planets in the 12th house, that most of especially if you have a stellium or a cluster, many planets there, that you need alone time. You need some self-care, self-rest. Like Meredith said, you need to take a nap.
Yeah. Right. And I think water is a big part of your life. Like the bathtub might be your favorite place.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. For sure.
Right. So the moon, with the moon here, or with Cancer on the 12th house cusp, which I have Cancer on the 12th house cusp. But so the moon in my chart will rule the 12th house.
Yeah.
So if you have Cancer on the 12th house cusp, if you have the moon in the 12th house, if you you should know what day the moon is going to transit your 12th house, So you
agree.
guys should get my moon calendar if you don't have one. And also, if somebody's moon is placed in your 12th house. So for
Yeah.
me, it would be if you had a Cancer moon, your moon would sit in my 12th house. I'm going to speak about this natally first, just if you have your moon in the 12th house. There's something about your mama. You have a very big mama story. Now, it can go in two different ways. Your mom could be somehow unavailable to you, somehow hidden from you, somehow sort of feeling too separate from you than what you really wanted. You could also lose your mama. There could be a loss or an ending around mama. Maybe your parents got divorced and you got a new stepmom that you had to go live with. Or you could also see that your mom is vulnerable in some way. Maybe your mom was an alcoholic or addicted to something, or just vulnerable. Maybe she was in the hospital. It could also be, and I thought this was interesting when I figured this out, because this happened to me, is that you yourself might have had to go into the hospital or an institution or go away from your mom for a period of time when you were young, when you in your childhood. So when I was burned with 3rd-degree burns all over my body. I had to spend 2 full summers, could not walk, was in a wheelchair, in isolation in the hospital. And I was 12 years old. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And it played out with me. So anybody who visited me had to wear a hazmat suit and just wave to me through the window. It was like COVID, but I was 12. It was 1978.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes, 77, 78. I thought that was so interesting. So I find if you have the moon there, sometimes you're separated from mother. And it doesn't even have to be mother's fault or bad mama.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
could just be circumstances. But what happens here when you have your moon here is you create such an emotional sensitivity to pain and suffering in life. It's like an unbearable emotional awareness around sadness and suffering. You may have experienced that in your own life to such a degree that you're just highly aware of it in other people. And so it creates a deep intuition, a psychic sensibility, and a deep emotionalism. Hopefully you can create a very high EQ out of this rather than just staying a victim to whatever crisis was created. Do you want to add to that, Connie?
Well, I was thinking, I've had the 12th house in my progress chart. It's been in my 12th house. My progressed moon, has been in my 12th house. And although I find that it can be a little bit, maybe not depressing, but you feel though that you need to go inward more. There's
Yes.
like you need to go inward and discover who you are. The transit and I think the progression is more of a time of self-discovery and about your own spiritual practices, your own emotions, how you meditate, what can you meet your guides? Absolutely. There's all kinds of things that can happen with that 12th house, and the progression is a long one. It's not, the 2.5 day period as the moon transiting around the zodiac. So I do find that even though it can be a little bit depressing, it can also be very life-changing.
Life-changing, and there's a richness in it. What do you think about, I didn't address, what do you think about when somebody puts their moon in your 12th house? So their natal moon sits in your 12th house. How do you see that? Connie's so smart. You are such a great astrologer. And I love having you on my team. And I just have to plug you right here. If you guys want a reading and you want one now, book Connie Joe, because she is just amazing. And she's giving readings at Soul Navigation. And we'll put all the details in the notes below. But anyways, keep going.
Okay. So for one, you have someone's emotions coming into your 12th house. If you have a healthy 12th house, meaning there's not a lot of hard aspects coming to that 12th house or planets therein, you might be able to handle that. It might be kind of cool. Like you've got this psychic connection with each other. You can kind of read each other's minds, right? But then if it's a little less healthy and you've got someone else's emotions coming in there, that can be a lot.
Yeah.
I think that can be a lot of pressure on you to handle someone else's 12th house issues as well as your own.
So you're going to sort of inherit their feelings. And so we hope that they bring healthy, well-balanced feelings to your life.
Absolutely.
And we hope that you're equipped to deal with those emotions. And it could also feel really quite up and down, right? Because emotions are constantly changing. Yeah.
It really could, because the moon, as we all know, it changes signs every 2.5 days. So especially if you've got someone with a Cancer moon, which Meredith, that would be you, coming into your 12th house, their emotions are kind of on that Cancer roller coaster, where their moon tends to roll with that tide every 2.5 days.
Yeah, it's interesting because I also think that the 12th house wants to be a nurturing, safe place for everyone. But if those emotions are too big and they just become, sort of the emotional vampire on you, it's just exhausting. It's like, gosh, I can never heal you. I can never fix you. I can never dry your tears. So you're
Oh
right.
my God,
It's like,
that's such a good point. I didn't take it to that level, but I agree. Just like you can have that good psychic connections, like you can almost feel each other's feelings, all of
yeah.
that. It can also be, oh my God, I feel everything you're feeling, and it sucks.
And can
So
you imagine, Connie, if your moon is in the 12th house and your partner's moon is in your 12th house? That is huge. That is
agreed.
that is huge emotions. So
Yes.
look for that. And if anybody has that, put a comment below. We want to know you. If you and your partner both have the moons in the 12th house, and what does your relationship look like? And that could be anybody. It doesn't even have to be your partner. It could be your child or your mother, or like
Yeah.
look at everybody's charts in your life so you can start to understand the deeper archetypes and the deeper things that are happening in your relationship. Okay, let's talk about Mercury.
Oh, okay.
What
So
do you think about Mercury there?
I actually kind of like Mercury there. Now, I think the one holdback is that a mercurial 12th house will probably observe and watch more than they will talk, but
Yeah.
they will see everything. Trust me. I think their imaginations are off the charts, which is why so often, and think about it, Meredith, because the sun and Mercury are never more than 45 degrees apart.
Mm,
Oftentimes, if you have the sun in the 12th house, you also have Mercury there as well. So I
smart.
think that's how the acting thing can come in, all of that imagination. And also, maybe you don't want to think about 12th house things, and it's easier to get on that imaginary plane and think about things that are the fantasy of it
Yeah.
all. I also think that you have a closer connection. You're able to communicate with spirits easier, whether that means you're a medium or whether it means you just meet your own spirit guides, or whether it means you just talk to God, or however you perceive God or spirit to be in your life. And maybe, just maybe, you have a little bit of a knowing about your past lives.
Mm,
I think with any planet in the 12th house, we kind of see, you know what I mean, Meredith? It's like you may
yeah.
have dreams about past lives, or you may have deja vu moments where you've never been to this place before, but it feels so familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I think that could go with most of the planets, but Mercury as well. It's like you recognize, that's our thinking process. You recognize
Totally.
place, but all of
I,
a sudden you're like, I've never been here.
exactly. Okay. So that like sparked a thought in me. I want to know where, if you have a Mercury 12th house placement, where did you do your best learning? Like, were you homeschooled? Were you put into a boarding school? Did you go to a trade school? Did you go to art school, dance school? You know, there's usually a little bit of a different kind of learning, or maybe they didn't maybe like high school wasn't for them, or academic exams, they failed the academic exams, but they got into a great college through their essay that they wrote. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I know
Something,
exactly what you mean.
yeah.
A very different kind of talent, the way they process their way they process words, the way that they
Yeah.
think could be so different, that is, but also very innovative, almost like a Mercury retrograde,
Yeah,
in the natal chart. Very, just a lot of
exactly.
innovation.
I don't know what placement John Mayer is. I don't know if he's a Gemini or a Pisces or what, but he said this thing that reminds me very much of this placement. And that is, he said in high school, he just sat in the back of the class. I think he said he smoked pot all day. He was checked out. He daydreamed. He failed everything. And he said, I knew my only way out of the hole I dug, because I didn't want to learn. I didn't want to be in a stereotypical classroom, was my music. And
Oh, wow.
listen to his soul and his songs and the way he plays his music. It's very 12th house. The person who has the Mercury in the 12th house can take you places that, as you said before, the sun, they can take you places with their voice if they can find it,
Yeah.
to places that you can't even go to yourself. They can string words and thoughts like poetry from the soul or from the ethers or from the spiritual realm that maybe you have felt before, but you could never string those words together. But they have to find their voice first. And I
Yes.
think they lose their voice before they find it, because somebody in their life has told them to not talk, or their perspective is not valid. You know, it got shut
Yeah.
down somehow.
I think you're right. And it just, you made me remember, just by saying that, how important music is to the 12th house.
Right.
Neptune rules music, and Pisces is such a big part of music and everything. I absolutely love that. I think that is one of the most beautiful parts of the 12th house.
Yes. Okay, we have a lot of planets to get through, so we got to speed it up.
Okay.
Venus. So I'm just going to take on Venus. So I think Venus here can be absolutely, utterly magical if the person who has a Venus placement here can truly evolve. And oftentimes they devalue themselves. They feel they're not pretty enough. They don't have enough money. They see other people as better than them, and they have an unconscious sort of desperate need for love with this placement. And they can even sell out their soul for love. I mean, I'm not saying everybody's a prostitute, but this could be, how are you going to sell out for love?
Mhm.
And are you going to sell out for love? So are you going to marry the wrong person for money? Are you going to be in the marriage that your parents want you to be? Are you right? And so that's
Yeah.
how it can go wrong. But when it goes right, there is an angelic quality here that is absolutely incredible, where you literally love the underdog, love the world. You probably are a person who could put your heart and soul into solving the homeless problem in California
Oh, yeah.
or
Wow.
Seattle or
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
there is a part of you where you can be, this can be one of the most beautiful, most loving, most kind, most nurturing placements, if they can get over their own deeply personalized insecurities around having felt not good enough for much of their life. And I want to know if there's a person out there that has overcome those insecurities and now feels their greatness, because this can be an unconditional love, like a Mother Teresa love.
Oh, yeah. Well, Meredith, do you find also that it can be the house of hidden love affairs?
Absolutely. With Venus or Mars there. Absolutely. And that goes to synastry. So if somebody puts their Venus in, or if you're dating somebody who has a Venus in the 12th, right? So if your partner has Venus in the 12th, or your partner's Venus is in your 12th, I don't know. I think sometimes that makes me want to know your password on your phone, because I'm going to check it. I'm going to check your phone.
Oh, I
If you
love
have
it.
Venus in the, if you have Venus in the 12th, and you don't give me your password, I'm going to be like,
Ah,
I'm going to say, honey, go take a shower. I'm going to try to do face recognition when you're asleep.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. So
Now
it
it's not, it's
yeah.
not always that, right, Connie, but it can be. You'd have to look to the rest of the chart. Like, do they have a great Saturn placement? I hope that they have a great Saturn placement to create that stability.
Yes. Meet
Yeah.
Lucy. Sorry.
Cute. She's adorable. Adorable. What do you think about Venus transiting the 12th house really quickly?
I like it, especially if it is hitting somehow the ruler of your descendant. I think this is a time when it could bring love into your life. Um, Meredith, I haven't really thought about a lot about Venus transiting the 12th. I think it goes by so quickly that
Yeah.
I haven't stopped to smell those roses. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Well, I think this is a really artistic placement. And this would
Yeah.
be a time when I would like say, write your book, write your music, write your song,
Yeah.
and
Agree.
I love how you just talked about if it's hitting the ruler of your descendant. I think that is magical, Connie, and that is so bright. And I don't think about that very often, but so it's a little bit complex. We don't have time to totally teach it. But
Right.
for the advanced students, think about that. If you have a really lovely trine to the ruler of your 7th house,
Yeah.
and to Venus transiting, that's a magic minute. That's Connie's magic minute for love. So that's a great love formula.
Yeah.
Let's
For
talk
sure.
about Mars.
Okay, so Mars, you know what I thought when I first looked at Mars, Meredith, is that if it's close to the ascendant, there might have been trouble in childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
That there may have been a C-section, or there may have been some kind of an emergency in the actual childbirth. Now, that doesn't mean it happens every time, but I have seen that when it's very
Wow.
to the 12th house side.
That happened to me. So
Oh.
Mars was transiting my 12th house and it crossed over the ascendant. And they called it Magno baby. My baby was so large. I mean, I would have been one of those people who would have died in childbirth had there not been an emergency C-section. Connie, you are so smart.
Well, thank you.
That is so true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So I kind of also see Mars in the 12th as the spiritual warrior, putting your energy into a spiritual practice.
Oh, that is really
when it's
good,
positive.
because I think too, with Mars in the 12th, you may feel that you can't you find it hard to be assertive with other people. You may find that people cross your boundaries and it may make you angry, but you turn that inward in a way. Again, it almost reminds me of Mars retrograde in the natal chart, where you don't actually show those feelings. Now, can this be overcome? Absolutely, it can. I mean, no problem. But you may find that you don't express feelings or desires that readily with Mars in the 12th.
Yes, I agree with that. And I also think that you introvert, as you say, there's an introversion here with Mars kind of hidden. I think there's secret love affairs with this placement too, when it's unhealthy. There can be a deceitfulness or sort of feeling like in order to fit in, you have to live a lie. So you hide your real energy, your real activities. You sneak out the window to go to the concert that you didn't tell your parents about, or
Right.
and also I think illicit activities. So I see sometimes a lot of addiction to escapism here as well
Yeah.
with Mars there. Because, and also because you can't see the boundaries in this house, I just want to recommend anybody who has Mars in their 12th house to not do drugs and be careful about even being roofied at a bar.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
everything's laced with fentanyl right now. And so even if you take a hit off of a blunt of a stranger at a concert because you're just having a great time, you're vulnerable and susceptible to, I think, overdosing, even unknowingly,
Yeah.
unknowing overdose, or and so just to be really, really careful because you can't see the edge. You can't see the boundary as well with Mars here.
I
And it,
feel the same way.
yeah, it can
Same
really
way.
take you out.
Yes.
And if somebody's Mars is in your 12th house, well, that's pretty huge. I mean, there must be, I think that person would probably bring a spiritual or a deepening element to the relationship. Like it would not be probably superficial. There would probably be a depth.
I think so too, but I also feel like it could bring a little bit of aggression and you
Oh,
don't quite understand why.
like
You know, your
passive aggression.
Yes, like your Mars is falling in my 12th house, and you're not angry at me and you're not saying ugly, crappy words to me, but at the same time, I feel this aggression towards me and I don't understand it. You know,
Oh,
you know what I mean?
that is so good. Yes. And I hate that because I
You think
can sense it. And I'm just like, and then sometimes I think it's one thing when it's a totally different thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I think the remedy for this Mars in the 12th house, which I think a lot of Mars in the 12th house people don't want to do this remedy, but I think it's exercise, like
Hmm.
movement. It's really hard to be passive aggressive after you've, run 5 miles.
And that's a good idea, though. I really like that. And I guess at the end of the day, as Mars is our sexual planet as well,
Mm.
and they're in their 12th house and they're having these sexual fantasies about you. I mean, that could actually get kind of fun. A lot, a lot of fantasy sex.
Yeah, that is fantasy sex. And so,
Yeah.
and that's also really open-minded sex and transcendental
Yeah.
sex and
Yeah.
sex, like that just takes you to this total high, nirvana, the
Yeah.
orgasm,
I
the
love it. Yeah.
unbelievable, spiritual orgasm. Okay, so Jupiter, okay, I have this placement, Connie Joe. Do you have your progressed moon in the 12th house?
And I have my natal Neptune
Oh,
in the
good. Okay, we're going to
in the
get to it.
12th. Yeah.
That's why you are so good at this job. Okay. That's why. So I have my Jupiter here and love I love how Sue Tompkins said that this was the guardian angel placement. I love
Yeah.
Sue Tompkins. She's from
She's
England.
amazing.
She's a great astrologer, but it's a double-edged sword. And I would agree with this because the guardian angel cannot be a guardian angel without a crisis, without somebody needing to be saved. And if you're
Oh,
going to save somebody, that is dire. And so you're dealing with really hard things when Jupiter is here. It's not all optimism and inspiration and happiness, but I do think that's true. And I won't go deep into personal reasons, but I think that with Jupiter here, you can deal with the darkest of the darkest of the darkest stuff. Wherever you have Jupiter is where things are exaggerated. Well, this is already the house of the divine and losses and endings and spirituality and psychic intuition. So that's all magnified. But
yes. Yeah.
like I said, you can't be the guardian angel without some sort of devastating loss. And so a toughness has to occur if Jupiter is going to be in the 12th house, kind of a toughness. But this toughness is usually behind a happy face, or, you know, a sort of mask, if you will, like a mask of happiness. Like they don't wear this toughness like Saturn would in a cynical way. But there's a resiliency built in. And it usually comes from, if you have Jupiter in the 12th house, you will be facing crises or situations that will force you into understanding, who is God? Why does God exist? Why am I on the planet? You know, there is an enormous desire to understand, what is life? Who am I? You know, and so a belief system is built. Not only is it built, you will be absolutely forced to reckon with your ego, to stand in the higher road and the faith of life and exercise it. And so again, it's really painful because you're faced with the question, is there even a God? You know, it's hard. I think it's a twisted blessing.
When you started talking about it, I thought, yeah, but Jupiter is our belief systems. So I totally see where you're coming from with that, especially with the magnification of everything that Jupiter brings. Yeah.
And that's Jupiter's house, you know, in traditional astrology, that's Jupiter's house. So it's at home there, and it wants to ponder those big questions. With a Jupiter in the 12th, you're getting a really big thinker, but or a big imagination or a bigness about somebody, because it's Jupiter is 13,300 times the size of Earth. And then it's in the house of infinity. But they might not be good with the little tiny technical details of the daily life. And so the world can feel really vast and big. And yet the Jupiter in the 12th house person is just like, but how do I take a bite out of this apple? You know, I don't know how to work the details.
Wow.
Yeah. You need to hire a good team of people if you're going to be Jupiter in the 12th.
I agree. I so agree.
Let's talk about Saturn. Take on Saturn. This is really, I think, a tough placement, but well, maybe we should, before we do that, we should just say, if somebody puts their Jupiter in your 12th, they are bringing you a bigness to the world, right? Like pontificating deep spiritual questions and a faith. Yeah.
Meredith.
And okay. So Saturn.
So we have the planet of karma, the father time, all in the 12th house. Now, Meredith, do you think this might cause someone to live a longer life, give them longevity? This is something I was pondering. And would kind of like to do a little bit more research on. So just think about that. If you have Saturn in the 12th house and you're in your 90s or 80s and you watch Meredith, let us know, leave a comment. So, but another thing, I think it can bring a fear that you don't understand why you are feeling fear. It could also be, just as Meredith was talking about the mother being missing with the moon, this could also be the father being missing. Now, you know, we all have our own story with the 12th house. So it could be many different things that could happen when Saturn lands in the 12th, but it very well could be that you did not have the guidance of a male father figure in your life, that was missing for you. But I think it can also bring a frustration to you when you have Saturn in the 12th, because you don't really understand why you're feeling the way that you do. It just brings a certain amount of anxiety. But there's a good thing too. It can also bring wisdom.
Yeah.
The wisdom of time, the wisdom of past lives, the wisdom of the world. I think that you may dream a lot with Saturn in the 12th, maybe dream of your past lives, maybe have nightmares about your past lives and with Saturn there. So it can be tough, but at the same time, Meredith, I think there are rewards
Mhm.
at the end of the day, maybe a long day, but
I think somehow and this is also, don't forget you guys to think about this is if Capricorn is on the cusp of your 12th house and you have no planets in Capricorn too.
yeah,
And think about somebody else putting their Saturn in your 12th house. But there's a real nihilistic, like doomsday. So those more traditional, negative, Hellenistic definitions, I
yeah,
think more closely describe Saturn in the 12th than any other planet,
I agree.
and this is a tough placement, but Connie Jo is right. Like if you can work through your depression, your nihilism, your giving up on God, life, and the universe and the world and other people, if you feel the nothingness of the world, let's say you feel like you have nothing, maybe you've been cast out. If you can somehow move through those pains and sufferings, I think what you said, Connie, is so brilliant, is that the thing that you get at the end of the day is wisdom. That
Yeah,
was beautiful. And that's what I love about you. And that's what I love about your readings. And when I first met Connie and I was like, oh, I have to have her on my team, she gave me a reading and she really made me look at my chart in a whole new way. And you found a lot of optimism in the places that I felt, were suffering points in my chart. And it was really lovely. So I appreciate your Saturn
oh,
take on the 12th house. It's not an easy placement, but there's the greatest rewards come with Saturn, right?
yeah, absolutely, they do.
Uranus, let's just wrap up our last three here. And
Yeah,
also, I just want to invite people to join our community, be a super supporter, buy a report, book a reading with Connie Jo or myself, and join us. If you don't know our channel, explore on here. You're going to find all kinds of gems. But Uranus, I think here is really unique. And I think these people have you're going to have to tell me what you think about Uranus in the 12th, Connie, but
okay,
there's an unconventional, innovative creativity here that could just be mind blowing. And there's
yeah,
sort of like even a rebelliousness where they just are going to refuse to conform to society. And I think that they probably struggled with feeling so eccentric, so different, so unique that this could be somebody who is massively different, diverse, neurodiversity, processes life and their mind processes the world in a unique, different way. I also think this is one of the least judgmental places. So if you have Uranus in the 12th, it's like there is just an acceptance for differences in society.
yeah,
And they want to be seen as uniquely different. But there's a lot of pain that comes with being that uniquely different. What do you think of this placement?
wow, that was really good, Meredith. I agree. I think that also Uranus close to the ascendant, again, this could mean an unusual birth, that you came
Oh,
into the world in a very unusual way. I mean, perhaps you were, what is it, IVF, you know, a baby.
oh, yeah. I've
Unconventional is the right word.
yeah.
But I think that people that have Uranus in the 12th are probably so psychic, Meredith, that they spend as much time talking to spirit as they do to the normal people. And other people look at them like they have lost their freaking minds, but they haven't.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing. They're
Yes.
actually really sane. I love it.
Yes. Yes. I think this also can manifest in two different ways. Like they can be just flashes of brilliance and like otherworldly. They might even have lived on other planets before
That's
this,
what I, yes. Yeah.
yeah, before this boring Earth planet. I wonder about Howard Hughes, the famous Howard Hughes, because he became so eccentric and so reclusive in his life, and he dated Katharine Hepburn. And Leo DiCaprio played him in that movie. I forget what it was called. But anyways, I see such eccentricity here that they all, or like Tolstoy, they almost exile themselves from
Yeah.
society and from life.
Yeah,
And
that's very true.
this
Very
is
true.
sort of a struck by lightning in the psychic world, you know. And if somebody puts their Uranus in your 12th house, this you're going to have to accept they are eccentric
Yes.
in your life. They're just going to be flat out eccentric. And you gave us a great reminder, Connie. I just want to say it really quickly. Remember that the 12th house goes all the way to the ascendant. And so depending where the planet is in your 12th house actually matters, because if it's sitting right there on the ascendant, it is going to show up a little bit more loud. Like my Jupiter is literally sitting, it's literally sitting on top of that ascendant. It's not far behind, you know, it's not close to the 11th house.
Yeah.
And so you've reminded us of that a few times now. And I like that. And also just think about, if you guys have a composite chart with Uranus in the 12th house, you are a quirky couple.
Oh, absolutely.
Quirked out.
You may go alien watching on the weekend and
Yeah.
really meet them. I mean, who are we to say you didn't
Yeah.
talk to aliens, right?
Yeah, like the aliens are coming to meet you for sure.
Yeah.
I told my husband the other night, I said, I want to meet the aliens. I mean, if they're here, I really want to meet them. He's like, Meredith, be careful what you wish for. Okay, Neptune. So you have this natally.
I do.
Yeah. And where is it, close to the ascendant or close to the 11th?
No, it's right smack dab in the middle.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Both of them. It really is. But I think it gives me a leg up in my spiritual connection, that I'm able to, I think you're able to connect with the divine maybe a little easier with Neptune there. It's almost like a little gateway bridge that I feel very lucky that I get to have. But I think it can also, I know that sometimes I need my alone time, Meredith, so much. I don't get a lot of it, but I really need it. And I think that's another thing that has that Neptune in the 12th house connection, some, and also over feeling almost other people's feelings, and the feel, it's like wanting to cry at everything I see on the news, I hear on the internet, or just my best friend coming to me and something happened to her at work that day. There can be a lot of compassion with Neptune in the 12th.
Yeah. I do think these Neptune in the 12th house, these are the earth angels. And I think thank God for the Capricorn in your chart, because you can actually deal with the really hard stuff, but there's such tenderness. I kind of see it as there's a fragility, like tissue paper in the rain, unless you have a lot of other planets. Like you are a Capricorn, so you have a strength about you. So there's a strength in the compassion, but the world can just simply be too friggin' cruel for a Neptune in the 12th as well. And it's like unbearable. It's almost like they're inside out. But Neptune likes being in the 12th. So I do think it's very magical. But being that sensitive, that's like the moon in the 12th. It being that sensitive it comes with so much pain, because you have your pulse on the sadness. You know, you can see into the eyes of the ugliest human being on the planet and still find beauty. That's not easy.
And Meredith, something else, and I attribute this to Neptune in the 12th, is that I have had dreams ever since I can remember, back to 3 years old. And I'm not saying they were all good dreams, but I feel like they were all past life related, that I've been able to put together some of the bones of my past life. And I do believe that is because of Neptune in the 12th.
Yeah. And if somebody puts their Neptune in your 12th house, I think you're going to find a very compassionate person.
Yeah.
With that Neptune in your 12th. And if you have Well, Pisces in the 12th, that also creates this level of sensitivity, and you need to go find Neptune in your chart and see where it's at, because that Neptune in your chart, if you have Pisces on the 12th, is helping tell the story. And that also means that you have the natural zodiacal wheel as your chart. So you probably have your Aries rising if you have Pisces in the 12th, most likely, not always, but most likely.
Yeah, exactly.
And Connie Joe, another thing is I think that I think with Neptune in the 12th, the voice is compassionate, it's kind, it's loving, and it's nurturing, but it's very sweet. It wants to be kind all the time. And so they have a hard time drawing boundaries and saying
I was
no.
going to say that. Yeah, I agree.
It's really hard. And so they usually say no through Irish ghosting, like just not showing up, or they create an excuse that won't hurt your feelings. Like, they're not going to say, no, I don't want to go out on a date with you because you're just not my type. You know, you're this or that, or, you know, you're not attractive enough, when that might be the real reason. Instead, you're going to be, oh, my sick mother needs me.
Meredith, you're calling me out. Stop it. I feel very called out right now. But yeah, I agree. It is hard to say no.
It's really hard to hurt people's feelings.
Hurt them. Yeah, I have to really use my Sag moon to get to that point where I will hurt your feelings. It's
yeah.
hard for me. Yeah.
I forget what video I just did. I just did it. I can't remember, but I was like, God, I had to learn how to be mean, you know,
Yeah.
Otherwise, well, I'm training a puppy right now. I have to be really, really mean, and I don't like it. I have to be like, no.
That's right.
And it's just a game, because inside I'm like, oh, you're so cute. Okay, let's just finish up with Pluto. So I did a whole Pluto series. And if you guys are really interested in Pluto in the 12th, please go watch my Pluto series. And I just want to say, I think this is painful. I think that there is, yes, there is great healing and transformation. And so when you do get your Pluto in the 12th right, which is probably going to take a little bit of time, because Pluto represents the psychological wound, you basically have to learn how to surrender your ego massively. So you have to be put into a position, or you will be put into a position where you will have to surrender that ego, that power inside of you. And that's painful. So I have found that people with Pluto in the 12th have had to overcome extreme cruelty or hardship placed upon them that created psychological trauma. And it makes me a little bit sad, but the healing that can occur, and then what they can do with that healing for the world, is incredible. Absolutely incredible. I don't think Michael J. Fox has this placement, but to think about what Michael J. Fox has done to the Parkinson's community is just astronomical, right? But who would want him to ever have Parkinson's to deal with? And I'm not saying that's his placement. This is his placement. I'm just giving an example of how you can take your own wound and help the world heal through developing compassion, empathy, and even in his case, just cold hard cash to do the research and development for the new drugs for people who suffer with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
So that's just an example of a blessing. But I think when you have Pluto in the 12th, you don't trust easily. You have a cynicism about life. You conceal your pain. You might have had your power taken away from you through unspeakable ways. Yeah. Do you want to add to that?
Well,
say again.
I just feel like with Pluto, it could have been something, your power being taken away in a very forceful manner. That, and you know, I don't want to get into the really dark, heavy side of it, but Pluto can be very dark and heavy before it reaches that transformational level that we want Pluto to go to. I mean, if you look at the mythology of Pluto, it's not a good time.
Right. And so if Pluto is transiting your 12th house, I want to hear about how you probably have had to face death, destruction, violation, all those horrible, god awful things, but you may have also in the process have found your power, your spiritual power,
Yeah.
your undying faith in self, in the world, or in God, can come from that. You might have even received a miracle. Let's say your life was about to be taken, but instead, miraculously, you were saved. That can happen with the Pluto
Yeah.
transiting the 12th house too, like a
Yeah.
resurrection of life.
Oh, that's really good, Meredith. I agree.
Because the belief system or the faith is so strong, where you were maybe supposed to die but didn't. There can be a golden parachute. And I wish I had all the answers on who gets the golden parachute and who doesn't. And I wish everybody got one. But I have seen the golden parachute with when Pluto has transited the 12th. And
Yeah.
I want to hear the personal stories. So where do you have your Pluto? Could you relate to this video? There is no way this took so much time already. There's no way to go, like we could talk about one house for over an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. But do you have anything else that you want to say, Connie, before we sign off?
No, I
About-
don't. I think we pretty much
Covered it all.
a lot about the 12th house that I'm glad that we put out there. So it's
Me
not so
too.
gloomy and doomy.
Me too. And we hope that you guys got a lot out of this, and book a reading with Connie. And we will see you in the shop and on the members video. And please like and subscribe and help us get our work out there in the world. Take good care. Bye,
Bye.
Connie.
Bye.
Bye.